Hello, 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 everyone. Data doesn't move people, emotions do, by Jen Psaki. I think I was on a Morning Joe program at some time recently. So anyway, let me drop that off. Let's hide that, and there we can see me. Let me put my other glasses on. All right, so I can see everything. Okay, so what we want to talk about today. The first thing is, let me go to the banner page and take care of this. Let's put the banner up there on the bottom. This one going across the bottom. This is our disclaimer, by the way. All the opinions expressed here are mine and do not necessarily reflect those of any particular organization, group of people, agency, department, government, whomever. These are my opinions, okay? And if you're under the age of 18, this show is not for you. All right, so first thing I want you to know is that our other organization, the C3 side of the organization, is looking for 5 volunteers to test our Go Transport program. These are volunteers, veterans who happen to be veterans, and this is for getting a ride to your medical appointments if you need that. It's run through Uber, and we're testing our systems out now. Hope to roll it out in the near future. So anyway, just please, if you're interested in volunteering as a tester for that, we'll get the information to you. And right there's the contact information. You can contact Stacy.Lunsford at TDVA Online for more information. Okay, got that out of the way. So here we go, folks. We're going to jump into a couple of different things. The first thing I want to talk about would be continuing our conversation on Project 2025 and the horrible, horrendous stuff that's contained in that attacks every single American in this nation. Not just a handful here and there. I mean, this is something that will be horrendous and have a tremendously negative impact on every American in this country, including those who are pushing this stuff. Yes, it will impact them too, but they don't see that. So anyway, let's go share the screen and take a look at a few things. There we go. Back over to Project 2025. Today we're going to be talking about Section 2 out of Project 2025. Let me go right here to the policy section. I'll show you where we are. We're in Section 2 right now. We're looking at the Common Defense. So we'll look at this section. We've got the section pulled up. We'll look at it. Department of Defense, Homeland Security, and Department of State. I've got those 3 pulled up in the background. I don't know if we'll get to all 3 of them, though. I try not to overload every single thing, but this first one is Chapter 4 on the Department of Defense, okay? So let's go take a look in the Department of Defense for any kind of words or anything like that kind of tell us, their ideological leanings and what they want to do in there, to clean the thing up, right? Yeah. All right. So in paragraph number 2, yet the department, let me just, if I can increase the size of this just to make it a lot easier, yet the Department of Defense is a deeply troubled institution. It has emphasized leftist policies or politics over military readiness. Recruiting was the worst in 2022 that it has been in 2 generations. And the Biden administration's profoundly unserious equity agenda and vaccine mandates have taken a serious toll. All right. That's the first thing. And this, by the way, this chapter is written by, this is Stephen Miller is the person over this particular section, Section 4. This is the introduction to Section 2, the Common Defense, okay? And this is in the 2nd paragraph. And then in the 3rd, the good news is that most enlisted personnel and most officers, especially below the rank of general or admiral, continue to be patriotic defenders of liberty. And so are those admirals and generals up there. Miller. Jeez. Oh my God. All right. But this is now Barack Obama's General Officer Corps. They conflate all this stuff together. They try to, they do things like, manipulating emotions and stuff like that, and make people really think that, that this is the problem. And many people over here on the right seem to think that the fall of America started with President Obama, which is, it hasn't fallen. America hasn't fallen. It's just changed a little bit, okay? And that's fine. It's changed for the better, but not for them. They see it as changed for the worse. Okay, that is why Russ Vought argues in Chapter 2 that the National Security Council should vigorously review all general and flag officer promotions to prioritize the core roles and responsibilities of the military over social engineering and non-defense related matters, including climate change, critical race theory, manufactured extremism, and other polarizing policies that weaken our armed forces and discourage our nation's finest men and women from enlisting. The only reason it's polarizing is you got these idiots over here writing stuff like this and putting it out there. That's the only reason it's polarizing, because they feel a certain way. It makes them feel kind of whatever, They just don't want to be around anybody who doesn't look like them and think like them and believe like them and all of that. That's all that is. Let's scroll on down through this first part here. Okay. And then, an effective diplomatic corps is central to defending our interest and influencing world events. Whereas most military personnel have had leftist priorities imposed from above, the problem at stake comes largely from within. The former State Department Director of Policy Planning, Karen Skinner, writes in Chapter 6, large swaths of the State Department's workforce are left-wing and predisposed to disagree with conservative presidents' policy agendas and vision. Oh, my goodness. Okay, let's go on down. Skinner writes, the next administration must take swift and decisive action, decisive steps to reforge the department into a lean, functional diplomatic machine that serves the president and thereby the American people. Okay, because the Senate has been extraordinarily lax in fulfilling its constitutional obligation to confirm presidential appointees, she recommends putting appointees into acting roles until such time as the Senate confirms them. And I've said that in other shows too. That's what this Project 2025 and the Heritage Foundation is all about. They really don't care whether the Senate approves a person, confirms a person to a role or not. They're going to put them in there as an acting role until when and if the Senate confirms them. They could be in an acting role the entire time they're there. But let me be clear now. Both sides of the political spectrum use this same tactic. It's the same thing that goes across on all of them, but this, you're going to see it put on steroids in this case. This time, they just don't even care whether the Senate confirms these people or not. They're going to put them in there in acting roles anyway. Okay. In Africa, Skinner writes, the U.S. should focus on core security, economic, and human rights rather than impose radical abortion and pro-LGBT initiatives. Divisive symbols such as the rainbow flag or the Black Lives Matter flag have no place next to the stars and stripes at our embassies. Okay, we're going down to the next one. Former Vice President of the Agency for Global Media, Maura Namdar, writes in Chapter 8 that we need to have people working for USAGM who actually believe in America. We do. The rest of us do too. Anyway, that's how you divide people, right? People who actually believe in America. Well, there's obviously some people who, from this perspective, they're making you think that there are those who do not. Rather than allowing the agencies to function as anti-American, taxpayer-funded entities that parrot our adversaries' propaganda and talking points. Okay? Acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security Ken Cuccinelli says in Chapter 5 that the Department of Homeland Security, a creation of George W. Bush era, should be closed. Let's go on down. And in Chapter 9, former acting Deputy Administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development, Max Primorak, asserts that the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, must be reformed, writing, the Biden administration has deformed the agency by treating it as a global platform to pursue overseas a divisive political and cultural agenda that promotes abortion, climate extremism, gender radicalism, and interventions against perceived systemic racism, which are all real threats. Okay, so that was just basically the forward to the common defense section in Section 2. Okay, Now let's jump over into the next section. Here we go. This one is chapter 4 in section 2. This is the Department of Defense, written by Christopher Miller. Okay. I went through and highlighted a few things through here just so you can see what we're talking about. The DOD, this is what Mr. Miller writes, okay? The DOD is also a deeply troubled institution. Historically, the military has been one of America's most trusted institutions. But years of misuse, a two-tiered culture of accountability that shields senior officers and officials while exposing junior officers and soldiers in the field, wasteful spending, wildly shifting security policies, exceedingly poor discipline and program execution, and most recently, the Biden administration's profoundly unserious equity agenda and vaccine mandates have taken a serious toll. That's what we read before. That was another other piece. Now let's go on down through here. Let's see what else we can find. Okay. Okay. And here's one too. Priority number 1. They have these 4 priorities. Reestablish a culture of command accountability, non-politicization, and war-fighting focus. Transform our armed forces for maximum effectiveness in the era of great power. Provide necessary support. Okay. Demand financial accountability. Yes, fine. DOD. Let's go on down and see what else we can find in here. And I've got them all highlighted in different colors. So, and I may miss a few things in here, but I went through and searched for words. So you can do the same thing. Download these chapters and go digging in here. Dig into it. Look for words that are important to you, like gender or sexuality or sex or woke, LGBT, abortion, diversity, equity, inclusion, social things, or faith and church things. That's what I did. You go through here and find all these things, okay? And let's scroll on down. Let's go on down. I know I highlighted a few sections that are critical. All right. Restore standards of lethality and excellence, Mr. Miller. Entrance criteria for military service and specific occupational career fields should be based on the needs of those positions. They are exceptions for individuals who are already predisposed to require medical treatment. For example, HIV positive or suffering from gender dysphoria should be removed. And those with gender dysphoria should be expelled from the military service. Physical fitness requirements should be based on the occupational field without consideration of gender, race, ethnicity, or orientation. Yeah. Not. Okay. Yes, that's what they want to do. Kick out all the people who are transgender. Okay. And not let any of them in. When in fact, out of every population in the country, the transgender people actually serve at a really high rate. It's really, really extremely high rate go into the military. Eliminate politicization, reestablish trust and accountability, and restore faith to the force. The big part about this was the political part of it, as well as the faith part of it. And they go down to tell you what they mean. Strengthen protections for chaplains to carry out their ministry according to the tenets of their faith. Codify language to instruct senior military officers, 3 and 4 stars, to make certain that they understand their primary duty to ensuring the readiness of the armed forces, not pursuing a social engineering agenda. This direction should be reinforced during the Senate confirmation process. Orders and direction motivated by purely partisan motives should be identified as threats to readiness. Actually, it's always been that case with the military because you're looking for people who are willing to serve their country. And so it doesn't matter what your identity is, minority status or not. If you want to serve your country, you should be able to do it. And many times they've had to overcome those barriers that were imposed by the politicians to start out with. The military just knows you got to get the job done, but the politicians want to throw their stuff into it. And so sometimes it takes a little bit of pushing the boundaries of what's allowed to get things accomplished correctly so that you have all the resources you need, including the best people to do the job. Okay. eliminate Marxist indoctrination and divisive critical race theory programs, and abolish newly established diversity, equity, inclusion offices and staff. They want to turn this thing into a, let me see, whitewash is not the word of it. That's close. Colorblind is more like what they're trying to do, make it colorblind, but really it's a little stronger than that. What they're actually working toward is minority blindness, which accomplishes nothing, because if you're blind to the needs of the minority populations within your overarching organization, then your focus will be directed towards the majority and not necessarily addressing the needs of those who are not in the majority. You just wash right over things. Your problem doesn't exist. We don't see it. Okay. Restrict the use of social media. Okay, I'm not going to jump into that one. Audit the course offerings at military academies to remove Marxist indoctrination, eliminate tenure from academic professionals, and apply the same rules to instructors that are applied to other DoD contracting personnel. In other words, you're controlling the language that you want conveyed. Right. And here we go. Reverse policies that allow transgender individuals to serve in the military. Gender dysphoria is incompatible with demands of the military service, and the use of public monies for transgender surgeries or to facilitate abortion for some service members should be ended. There are some tremendously amazing individuals, highly skilled, trained, knowledgeable, and exceptional people who are transgender serving in the military from probably about 06 on down to E1. Okay. 06 to E1, at least that I know. There may be others, maybe some higher than that. I don't know, but 06 is the one I know of for sure. So, yeah, I mean, really, you've got to be freaking kidding me. You know, oh my God. These are some highly skilled people, folks, and you just want to get rid of them because they make you feel funny to be around them. And they're not causing a burden to the military or to readiness or to lethality. As a matter of fact, their perspective enables the force to be even more lethal and better prepared. Value the military family. Da, 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 da. And obviously, their definition of family is not quite yours and mine. It does not include single parents, doesn't include a single mom or a single dad, doesn't include same-sex or same-gender couples, doesn't include unmarried families, doesn't include anyone else who they disagree with, and it doesn't even include your chosen family. It's got to be that, you know, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, and Miss Smith idea. Okay, that's all they're interested in. The rest of them, they just, you know, they don't want to see them. Audit all curricula and health policies in DoD schools for military families. Remove all inappropriate materials and reverse inappropriate policies. Reduce the number of generals. Okay, no. Let's go roll on down to the bottom and keep on going. I'm just looking for the highlighted sections at this point. The status quo is further marked by pervasive, politically driven, top-down focus on progressive social policies that emphasize matters like so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, and climate change, often to the detriment of the Army's core warfighting mission. No, it is not. And it's also not so-called. This stuff really just irks me to no end. Transform Army culture and training. The Army can no longer serve as the nation's social testing ground. It always has done that, folks. Whether you know it or not, it's always done that. They rebuilt Army that is focused again on its core warfighting mission and overpowered it with the tools, resources, and authorities it needs to accomplish that mission. Must be the next administration's highest defense priority. Stop using the Army as a test bed for social evolution. Misusing the Army in this way detracts from its core purposes while doing little to reshape American social structure. Actually, that's a complete pile of crap statement right here. The Army no longer reflects national demographics to the degree that it did before 1974 when the draft was eliminated. Okay. So what are you saying? What do you say? You don't want it to be a volunteer force. You want to go back to a draft. That way you can just draft up whomever, except for the wealthy kids. You know, they can get a pass on it. They got enough money to persuade otherwise. Right now you have people who are willing to go in there and serve. And the people who are willing to serve, well, if they don't look like the rest of America, well, there is a problem, but it's not on the military recruiting side. It's out in the society itself. Sorry to disappoint. It's just the way it is. Let's scroll on down, see if there's anything else in this. I just got a highlighted section. And probably not. Maybe, I don't know. Let's go on down. We'll keep looking. There's all kinds of stuff scattered out throughout here. So we'll just scroll on down and let's see, go to the bottom of this section. Are we getting there? Are we getting there? Yeah, we're getting to the bottom. Nothing down there. Okay, now we're done in the reference section. So let's get rid of this. We'll go out of the Department of Defense and we're going to leave that. We're going into chapter 5. This one is on the Department of Homeland Security by Ken Cuccinelli. All right. Let's go down and look for some of those yellow highlighted sections in here. Here we go. Unfortunately, let me see. Overview. Okay. Unfortunately for our nation, the federal government's newest department became like every other federal agency, bloated, bureaucratic, and expensive. It also lost sight of its mission priorities. Department of Homeland Security, DHS, has also suffered from the left's wokeness and weaponization against Americans whom the left perceives as its political opponents. All right. That's what I'm trying to show you is that this stuff is pervasive through this whole document. All 920 pages of this, it's everywhere in here. With very few exceptions. It's in every chapter except for maybe 5 chapters out of 30. Let me scroll down through, look for some more highlighted sections. I'm going to go as quickly as I can through here. I'm trying to get down to like 30 minutes for the show. Here we go. Oops. Nope, that's not the one we want. Migrant protections. Okay, Biden. Executive orders. All right. Doesn't look well. There's some more stuff down through here somewhere. Oops, there's a whole section on it. We'll find this one. Personnel. This is talking about the Coast Guard. U.S. Coast Guard is facing recruitment challenges similar to those faced by the military services. The administration should stop the messaging on wokeness and diversity and focus instead on attracting the best talent for U.S. Coast Guard, which is what they're doing. Yeah. And you want to make it so that everyone feels welcome to come in. Not just a group that looks like you, sounds like you, believes like you, thinks like you. No, we don't want that. We've got to actually have a representative group of people in the service, and we have to attract them and keep them in there. Simultaneously, consistent with the Department of Defense, the U.S. Coast Guard should also make a serious effort to re-vet any promotions and hiring that occurred on the Biden administration's watch. So you're going to re-vet them based on your principles because you think yours is better than everybody else? No. Hypocrisy abounds. Seriously. In this thing. All right, let's scroll on down. Oh my God. I'm just trying to show you how much this is in here, how much of it is here, okay? How much more is there? And the Department of Homeland Security. I know there's probably some more in here down at the reference section now. All right, so that would be that chapter. All right, let's leave that one. We're going to jump over to this one, Chapter 6, Department of State, Karen Skinner. Okay. This one's pretty much loaded with a lot of stuff in here. Just bear with me as I scroll down looking for my highlighted sections. Well, you would think there's some here somewhere. I know there are. I went through it. Okay, first one. The U.S. cannot neglect. Okay, now this is extremely important section. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. The U.S. cannot neglect a concern for human rights and minority rights, which must be balanced with strategic and security considerations. Minority rights are human rights. They're not distinct. It's actually included within that. Special attention must be paid to challenges of religious freedom, especially the status of Middle Eastern Christians and other religious minorities, as well as the human trafficking endemic to the region. Okay, let's scroll on down. Focus on core diplomatic activities and stop promoting policies birthed in the American culture wars. Well, you're going to have to tell that to a lot of those evangelicals that are going over there and proselytizing in Africa and around the world and in Europe and everywhere else, because they're taking those American cultural ideas, and you call it religious freedom things, to be able to do what they want, but you're taking it over there and they're creating this whole anti-minority narrative that is being picked up in Africa and in different places, and Viktor Orban and Hungary and Europe. This stuff is everywhere. And it's not, I mean, if you're going to stop this, you want to stop that from happening around the world, well, you better pull back on all those, what do you call them? Missionaries. Okay. Oh my God. Let's see now. African nations are particularly and reasonably non-receptive to U.S. social policies. And the reason they're non-receptive is because our evangelicals and missionaries went over there and said, hey, unlike what we're doing over there in America, you all can actually fight against these LGBT people and not do that. And you can actually go ahead and just do what the Bible says and kill them. Yeah, that's what? Non-receptive. We made them that way. Oh, my God. U.S. social policies such as abortion and pro-LGBT initiatives being imposed on them. The United States should focus on core security, economic, and human rights engagement. Their level of human rights, their definition of human rights does not include minority populations. With African partners and reject the promotion of divisive policies that hurt the deepening of shared goals between the U.S. and its African partners. So much crap in that. Let's go on down to the next one. There's one more down here, that at least one more. There's a whole section, I believe. International organizations. International organizations should not be used to promote radical social policies as if they were human rights priorities. What? Doing so undermines actual human rights and weakens U.S. credibility abroad. Now, they're getting ready to tell you what they mean by actual human rights here, folks. And it does not include any minority population rights for them, acknowledgement that there exists, that there are problems for them. It doesn't acknowledge any of that. And I'll show you where in just a second how they do this. The next administration should use its voice, influence, votes, and funding to international organizations to promote authentic human rights. Authentic human rights? They're drawing a distinction, because what they're saying is there are some inauthentic human rights. There's some human rights that aren't authentic. And what the hell is that? Well, they base this whole thing on what's called natural rights, natural human rights. And they ascribe those as only coming from God. Well, for the first thing is, you need to keep God out of it. Just start respecting human beings, authentic rights, regardless of who they are. LGBT, whatever, religious minority, whatever, doesn't matter. All human rights. Protect all of them. And what do you, authentic human rights? That's just a horrible way of defining this thing. And respect for sovereignty based on the binding international obligations contained in treaties that have been constitutionally ratified by the U.S. government. It must promote a strict text based interpretation of treaty obligations that does not consider human rights treaties as living instruments. Really? Both within the State Department and within international organizations that receive U.S. funding, including by making respect for sovereignty and authentic human rights, there's that phrase again, authentic human rights, a litmus test for personnel decisions and elections processes within international organizations. And here is where they tell you what they mean by authentic human rights. The U.S. Commission on Inalienable Human Rights. U.S. Commission on Inalienable Human Rights. Let me just go up here. I'm going to look this up and pull it up for you. Search the web. We'll do that in a minute. I'll come back over to it. Focused on the primacy of civil and political rights in its inaugural report, which remains an important guidepost for bilateral and multilateral engagements on human rights. That commission produced a document that I read that is just full of crap, folks. It's full of crap. There is no such thing as an inalienable human right. None. You might think there are. You might think that you have all these rights that were given, like God gave you a right to own that gun. God gave you a right to free speech. No, no, that's not the case at all. Oh my God. Focused on, okay, I've got all that. Bilateral relations on human rights. The Commission's report is a roadmap for revamping and re-energizing U.S. human rights policy, and should be the basis for both structural and policy changes throughout the State Department. All U.S. multilateral engagements must be re-evaluated in light of the work of the Commission. Hell no. That Commission was full of the people on the Commission. The people on that Commission, they were ideological far-right thinkers. Didn't include anybody else, because obviously, those other people's rights don't matter, okay? And initiatives to promote controversial policies must be halted and rolled back. It is paramount to create a healthy cultural respect for life. That means anti-abortion, everything. No rights for women. Women have secondary role and status within all of this. They're second-class citizens compared to the men, apparently. The family, and again, the family is that same definition as what we talked about earlier, Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, and Miss Smith. No other kind of variations on the family. Sovereignty and authentic human rights. There it is again, at authentic human rights in international organizations and agencies. To support this goal, the U.S. led an effort during the Trump administration to forge a consensus among like-minded countries in support of human life, women's health, support of the family as a basic unit of human society, and defense of national sovereignty. The result was the Geneva Consensus Declaration on Women's Health and Protection of the Family. And you can check it out. They have a reference. Let's look at number 21. All U.S. foreign policy. Well, where'd we go? Back. Oh. Let me get down to the bottom of this. Back up to the top. It's just a little. Oh, here we go. Here. Okay. All. What? Okay. Go back down the bottom. It jumped up there. Here we go. All U.S. foreign policy engagements that were produced and expanded on Obama and Biden administrations must be aligned with the Geneva Consensus Declaration. And only a handful of countries signed on to that darn thing. And the work of the U.S. Commission on Inalienable Human Rights. No, and no again. The U.S. government should not and cannot promote or fund abortion in international programs or multilateral organizations. Technically, the United States can prevent its international funding from going toward abortions, but the U.S. will have a greater impact by including like-minded nations and building on coalition launched through the Geneva Consensus Declaration, with a view to shaping the work of international agencies by functioning as a unified front or a united front. Okay, the COVID-19 pandemic made it painfully clear that both international organizations and some countries are only too willing to trample human rights in the name of public health. I'm just shaking my head at that. That's just. For example, the WHO was and remains willing to support the suppression of basic human rights, partially because of its close relationship with human rights abusers like the PRC. No, that's not why. They're trying to save as many lives as possible by asking them or telling them that they should do something to protect themselves and the rest of their family members and friends in their communities by following their advice. It's just the rational, the right thing to do. You know, it's based on a little bit of science, actually. The next administration should unequivocally embrace the premise that humanity and the international community can simultaneously tackle pandemics and other emergent health threats without impeding the rights of people. It must also become a vocal surrogate for people in countries where rights are being suppressed in the name of health. This will likely require all kinds of stuff. Okay. The United States must return to treating international organizations as vehicles for promoting American interest or take steps to extract itself from those organizations. Okay. Let's see what else we can find down through here. If there's anything at all. Yeah. Conclusion. In the main, this chapter refocuses attention away from special interests and social experiments that are used in some quarters to capture U.S. foreign policy. And that, folks, is Chapter 6, Department of State, by Miss Skinner, Karen K. Skinner. Okay? It's full of crap in there that if they get an opportunity to implement, they will implement it. Let me stop sharing. And so we're going to take up another section of this later this evening. And, I wanted to show you about the Commission on Unalienable Rights. You can go look that up. Go check it out. You can read the darn thing. It is just goofball crazy, just so you know. Department of State. Let me get out of this. Leave that. Go back over to where you are. Whoever's watching. Yeah, okay. Got a comment up here. See you in Hershey in March. Gorgeous. Love this. Yay. All right. See you later, folks. Let me get the banners back up here and let's go do this branding and close out with this. Here we go. Bye.